Hey, I'm Andy, and I'm here to tell you about Cubase 7.5, obviously on behalf of Steinberg. So Gear for Music have been good enough to invite me along today to do a little bit of a sneak preview and check out what's new. So to give you a basic product overview, of course there's always workflow enhancements. So you're going to see some really cool things, track versions, so different ways of being able to record tracks and I guess recall them, edit them and put them back together again. We're going to see some new instruments. So Agent SE4 is a pretty cool new drum sampler, building on the work that was done with Agent. We've got Hellion Sonic SE, so there's lots of new improvements in there, even down to things like the way we work with these new instruments. So track versions, rack instruments. A lot of you that have used Cubase in the past will know that there's quite a few differences there in terms of using them and I guess creating them on the project window and then bring them in the device window. So that's new. We've got some pretty cool new effects, and when I say pretty cool, there's a new killer reverb, an algorithmic reverb with loads of presets and loads of different, I guess, parameters for working with our sound and the environment that we're recording in. We've got loop mash effects, big requests from users, and of course we've got the return of the mighty Magneto, so a tape-based simulator. There's lots of other small things. So check out all the links around the pages on all the videos, and of course as you're browsing through the feature information you'll be able to find links that will shortcut you and take you straight to the videos which will show you the new features. So massive thanks to Gear for Music. This is a big first for us here in the UK and we're glad to be here showing this on behalf of the guys. Hope you enjoy it. Okay, so we've talked about track versions. What I want to show you is track versions used across, I guess, multiple takes. So a lot of us will be recording more than one instrument in the studio. So whether it be drums, I guess backing vocals, electric guitars, there's got to be an easier way of actually being able to record than just track comping. So let's go check it out in the software. What I have here is 4 different drum takes. So if you have a look, I've got a drum folder. I'll just close that and open it again. And you can see 14 drum tracks. So it's everything from kick drum mics through to overheads and room mics. In the past, if I was recording with a band, I would have done multiple takes, maybe asking a drummer to play with different feels. So in this case, I've done exactly the same thing, but every time the drummer's gone to do a new take, I've created a new version. So this is track versions in, I guess, a working environment. So if we select new version, you can see everything's disappeared or everything's gone, but that's okay because if we go over to the left-hand side, you can see that I have all the 4 takes that I recorded before and the new take. So if I hit record, a new version will start on there. So let's have a look at track features, I guess, in a group environment. You can see that I can name a track if I want. So this one I've named Drum Pushed Hat, this one Drum Groove 1, this one Drum Groove 1. I've decided that's the main one that I want to use. But how does it work in terms of actually being able to listen to it and edit it? So let's have a listen to it. I'll just hit play. Okay, so this is Drum Groove 1. This is the one that I really want to use. I've had a listen to it and I like it. But at any point in time, I can switch in between versions simply by clicking on them. So you can see there's a pushed hat in there. So let's go back to the first groove. And now let's go down to the rim shot. So you can see we're just crossing over seamlessly in between these different takes. So that's great. I can listen to the performance. But now let's say I want to edit the performance and mix, I guess, different components of it together. So all I'm going to do is, I guess, if we have a look at the groove that I want to use, maybe I want a bit of, I guess, dynamics in there. So maybe I want the drummer to start with his rim shot. So I'm just going to come up here, grab my inspector tool. Let's just make sure the snap is to bar. I'm going to go from bar 3, so there's 4 bars of the rim shot right there. So let's do that. Okay. Now all I'm going to do is simply hit, I guess you could say, copy or Control C. And now let's swap over to the track that I want to use. And you can see that this inspector has stayed in exactly the same spot. So no matter where I go, that area that I've copied is still highlighted. So all I need to do to paste it in the track is simply just go Control paste, and there's the rim shot. Now if I really want to tidy it up, then I could just go back, highlight both parts and put a crossfade in there, and then also move it around so it's nice and tidy. Okay, so you can see that very easily I've been able to record different takes, comp them together, and actually start mixing with them without having to make too many mouse clicks. One other very neat thing, which I'll point out now when it comes to drum editing, is the automatic hit point detection that's now in Cubase 7.5. So you can see underneath some of these tracks, you can see the hit points in there. So as soon as we start recording or import any audio, immediately Cubase detects the hit points, and now we've got a few shortcuts. We can go from the start and use Alt, B and N to start clicking through these hit points on the actual project window. So you can start aligning things and seeing how things align within your project very easily. So that's a really handy feature, and that'll work with any recorded audio or samplers. So that's track versions, I guess, in the multi-track recording sense. You can record drums, orchestras, like I said before, choirs, anything that's multi-track in a group track here. We've already had a look at how we can use track versions to record multiple tracks in, say, a group track with drums or an orchestra. But what about recording at home? So let's say you want to get creative. Let's say maybe you don't even play an instrument, but you've got a vocal line in your head, you've got a microphone, you've got the tools to be able to actually record at home, but maybe you're just struggling a little bit with chords. So let's have a look at how track versions can be implemented into other areas of Cubase. Over here I have a drum track, so this is the track that I was using earlier. At any point in time I can still use track versions to swap in between different grooves over there on the left hand side. But I'm going to hide my drums for now. I'm going to go down to chord track. So you can see we've got all these chords here. These are chords that I just entered using my mouse, and I'll show you how. First of all, let me show you that on the left. So if we click on track versions, just to open that again so you can see where it is, you can see I've actually gone through and created 3 different chord progressions. So what I've done is routed my chord track here through my whirly track. So this is my whirly track here. So anything that I play on chord track is going to activate these chords on the whirly track. Let's have a listen. Okay, so now we've listened to that chord progression. If we want, we now just click on the first progression and it changes the progression. Okay, now we can go through and listen to the second progression. So whereas with the drum track, we were actually changing between takes, what we're now doing is changing between different chords in our song, which is pretty cool because it means we don't actually have to decide on a set chord progression straight away. And of course, we don't even need to be able to play the keyboard. So I'm going to create a new version here. And all I need to do is just grab my draw tool. And now I can start entering in my own chord progressions. So it's as easy as just grabbing it. If we want to put something inside the bar, we just change our snap to beat and click, and there we have a whole lot of X's. So X's aren't much good because they don't play anything, but if we click on the first one, you can see we can go to the chord editor, and straight away I've just played a note on the keyboard that's sitting beside me. Cubase has detected what chord that is. So now that's an A minor 7. Now I can go across to my chord assistant and use my cursor to go to my next chord, and you can see that Cubase is giving us a suggestion. So it knows that an A minor to a D minor will work quite well. And then you can see down the bottom we've got this complexity. I guess it's almost like a slider. The further up we go, the kinkier the chords get. So you can go as far away from home as you want, but Cubase will always allow you to come back to your first chord if you want, or you can go down and you can change your cadence type and your chord structure type. So the good news is now that we've got that, the opportunities are basically endless. We can just sit there and go through and change chord progressions until we find something we like. So as I said before, this chord progression is actually triggering the whirly chords. So if I wanted to now, I could just click on this track and I could say project, where are we, chord track, chords to MIDI. And you can see instantly there the MIDI chords have appeared. So that's without playing really a note on the piano. If I don't like the inversions, or let's say I want something different, I can click on this, I can come over to chord track, I can take automatic voicings off, and now you can see I've got different inversions of each chord. So you can basically create any chord progression with any inversion that you want, turn it into a MIDI track, or even if you want, do this. Let's go over to visibility, which is a new feature, and you can see right here I've got, I guess, my key editor, But now I open up the score, and straight away from that chord track, I can actually see what's been written on the score. And the new score editor inside of Cubase reflects exactly what's going on in the key editor. And you can see we've got our chord tracks there as well. Okay, so loads of new features in terms of track versions. I guess working with, you can see multi-track recording, but also in, I guess, a home studio or any kind of studio where we just want to create some original chord progressions. So track versions work with drums, they work with multi-track recordings. You can see how you can use track versions with chord track to create your own harmonic content or your own chord patterns. What about just recording at home? Let's say you do play the guitar and you don't want to be, I guess you don't want to be hitting stop all the time and record and going back and thinking about different versions. So I'm going to show you another slant on track versions. So I'm not going to set up any new versions. Basically, I've got a guitar part here that I've been recording and I'm just going to cycle through and let it, I guess, just repeat over and over until I feel like I've captured the essence of what I want to record. So let's check it out. This is the guitar part in green here. So let's just go through and record some takes, I guess. Okay, so I'm not the world's greatest guitarist. That's why I'm using a capo, and I've recorded a lot of versions here. So let's go in and actually see what we can do with the versions that we have recorded. At the moment, we've got what we call lanes set up here. So you can see my guitar part here, and I've recorded quite a few different versions of this. So if I want, now I can grab my mouse, and I'm just right mouse clicking, and I can come through here and select sections, I guess, or different takes that I actually want to listen to. So that's one way of doing it. Let's have a look at another pretty unique way of doing it. So I'm just going to hit solo. I'm going to come through and play some of these takes. Okay, so what I want is a nice stereo effect. So I've got my right track here, that's panned to the right, and on my left-hand side, I've got my guitar. So this is one way of being able to actually audition what I've played. So I've just hit the solo button, but check this out. I'm now going to come up here and select electric guitar, and then I'm going to come over, let's make sure you can see my track versions. So at the moment, there's no track versions, just the first one. So I'm going to come up to Project, come down to Track Versions, and I'm going to say, create track versions from lanes, and instantly all of those lanes have now gone over here onto the left hand side. So I can come through now and audition all of those different versions that I just did in lanes. So I just need to take the mute off because the mute was on. Okay, so you can see that we don't just need to comp anymore. We can actually record. We don't have to select a new version. We just basically record it. We put them all into lanes, and then as I just showed you, we go up to Project, Track Versions, Create Versions from Lanes. So we've already recorded some music using, I guess, a guitar, some drums, and we've looked at how we can actually edit it inside of Track Versions. But let's now have a look at a quick vocal recording, and I want to show you a different way of actually being able to use track versions to your advantage using the comping tool. Now, you must forgive me, I'm not exactly the world's greatest singer or lyricist, so I went around the marketing department at Gear for Music, and everyone said John's the guy for lyrics, so he's come up with some pretty classic rhyming lyrics here. It's a work of art. Let's see if I can do it any justice. This is for you, John. Here we go. Right.
You won't believe it's gone. Whoa. You've been waiting for so long. Then you went and left it. Just tell me there's no right or wrong. Everyone just sings a song. Since you went and left it. Let's go again. You won't believe it's gone. 'Cause you've been waiting for so long.
Incredible stuff there. Let's go see what we can do with this amazing vocal track that we've got here. Right, so move the microphone out of the road. Actually, I just threw it out of the road. So I'm going to turn on lanes. So let's go down here, and you can see I've got all these versions that I've recorded. So now I can grab my comp tool by right mouse clicking, and I can come through and start soloing different versions that I've recorded. So let's have a listen to this.
You won't believe it's gone. You've been waiting for so long. Then you went and left here.
Okay, so I'm listening to it, it sounds okay, but there's a few pitch issues in there. So before I comp, I'm going to double click on this, and now you can see we've got vary audio, pitch and warp. So it depends on what kind of music you're into. John's into Kanye West and Rihanna and that kind of stuff. So he really wanted me to come up with a kind of synthetic sort of vocal line. So I'm just going to highlight everything, and now let's have a listen to it.
You won't believe it's gone.
So you can see I'm a bit off there. So let's highlight everything and come over and just quantize the pitch a little bit, straighten it up, and let's see if we can't make me sound a little bit better. So let's check this out.
You won't believe it's gone.
Oh, nice.
You've been waiting for so long.
Oh, there's that little vocal
Then you
flutter.
went and left here. Tell me there's no right or wrong.
There's Kanye.
Everyone just sings your song. Since you left here.
Okay, so you can see basically I'm taking the mickey, but you can go as far, into, I guess, the synthetic vocals as you want, or you can keep it organic just by controlling your quantize and your straighten pitch thing. So over the last few, I guess, versions of Cubase, we've seen loads of new instruments implemented. This is often down to the fact that Steinberg developers are sitting down with Yamaha developers. So you know that Yamaha are one of the greatest creators of, I guess, content in terms of keyboard sounds. They've been doing a great job for years. They are actually probably the largest music manufacturer in the world. So the fact that we're now sitting down together has led to the implementation of quite a few really cool new sounds and, I guess, new ways of being able to use them. Before I go in depth into the sounds, I want to show you probably one of the most interesting things in terms of workflow enhancement inside of Cubase. So in the past, if we were to work with instruments, we'd either come down here and we'd click on this and say, add instrument track, maybe we'd browse through the media bay, or maybe we'd select an instrument. That was a nice way of being able to do it. But if we wanted to work in a multi-timbral sense, so if we wanted to work with multiple instruments inside the one sort of sound brain, then we would have had to have come up here and selected VST instruments. But have a look what happens now when I actually select VST instruments up here. You can see it's a completely redesigned interface. So our developers were sitting down thinking, how can we make the integration between tracks, which might just be one voice or one sound, and racks, which could be up to 16 or maybe even more if you're using Hellion 5. So how can we, I guess, integrate the two of these together so that it's less confusing? So you can see we've got these slots here. If I want to add a track instrument, all I need to do is click on that arrow, and now you can see I can add a new instrument very easily. If I come to racks, I can also add a new rack instrument. There's quite a few other things that I want to run through, but first of all, I just want to show you what happens if you're actually out on your track window. So I'm working with Calm Keys. Let me open this up. So you can see this is one of the new Hellion Sonic sounds, and this is actually part of this new trip section of Hellion Sonic. It's a completely new analog synthesizer inside of the Hellion Sonic SE player, sorry, not Hellion Sonic, but I'll cover that in a section. So, in a later section. So if I want to go down to my second track, all I need to do here is just click Add Track, Add MIDI Track, and instantly, let's say Agent SE4, immediately you can see that MIDI track has been routed directly to the second slot on Hellion Sonic. So this is a much faster way of actually doing it. And now we could come in here and load up another instrument, and immediately that MIDI track will be routed straight to the patch that we've just loaded up. So that's one intuitive way of working with it. The other way is to come back here, and you can see now we've got all these different knobs. So these are basically quick control links. So as I open up my track, at the moment, if we have a look at this track that I'm playing, I've got chord track actually triggering the chords in calm keys. So if I open up, you can see there's a new editor here on the left-hand side. If I once again open up that interface, move down here into my quick control sections, you can see I've got this little QC quick controller which we make. So all I need to do is basically hold down over the first one, and now you can see that I can start using this controller to edit the parameters. So that's within Hellion Sonic, but if I go back also to my overview window here, you can see here in Calm Keys, it's also editing this. So now as I flick between instruments, I can now use my remote control editor to start editing different functions. So you can see now it's editing the synth function there. If I go back to Calm Keys, go back to my window there, you can see it's remembered exactly the quick controls for each different synthesizer that's loaded into this into this VST instrument slot. See, we've got tracks, which are singular instruments. We've got racks. The other advantage we now have, of course, is we can activate outputs, so we can have multiple outputs coming from each of our multi-timbral instruments, meaning they can each have their own representation in the mixer in Cubase. And the other thing we've got now, which is really handy, is MIDI inputs. So we can have more than one MIDI device all connected up through a MIDI interface, going straight in, and now we can route whichever MIDI instrument into whichever instrument into our instrument rack we'd like. So an important part of making contemporary music is not just being able to create vocals and I guess harmonies and play instruments. You'll have noticed if you walk into a music store, it's full of boxes with pads. So previously in Cubase we had Groove Agent, which was an MPC style, I guess, player, but we've gone one step better than that now, and we've actually created this new version, which is called Groove Agent SE4. So let's go and have a look at how Groove Agent SE4 actually integrates inside of Cubase. If you're familiar with the previous version of Groove Agent, which by the way is still included if you already have versions that are using that, so you don't need to, I guess, worry about losing any of your sounds that you'd previously worked with. So if you're familiar with it, you'll know it's an MPC style layout. So we've got lots of different combinations, probably up to about 128, I'd say, different combinations of pads there. And we can drag and drop sounds from our media bay if we want. So there's a couple of ways we can load sounds in. First of all, you've got the content that comes with Cubase. So there's loads of great kits here. A lot of them have been designed by Alan Morgan, who has worked with Nine Inch Nails, Taylor Swift, and quite a few other very successful, I guess, international acts. So the sounds are quality. But not everyone always wants to work with the sounds that come in the box. A lot of us like to be, I guess, original and create our own. So if that's the case, then you can start working with samples. So I'm just going to open up the media bay here, and let's go and find our kick drum menu. So here we go, kick drums. So I can go through and start auditioning different kick drums and just drag and drop them straight over into a pad. It's that easy. And of course, because it's a sampler, we've got up to 8 times oversampling, and you can see here now we've got 2 kick drums, and we can control the velocity cutoff. So as the note gets louder, the sample will cross over into the next sample. So that's quite handy. But that's always been the case inside of Groove Agent. So what's new about it? Let's dive in here and actually have a look at one of these banks. So here we've got some really good quality sounds. It's part of the drum and bass groove library. On my track, I've already recorded some live drums, so we're going to see how well they actually integrate together. Let's have a look at the actual editing functions. So if we click on this snare, we can move across. So we've got things like pitch. So as we play the snare, we can actually click on this and bring the snare down. If we want, bring the snare up. So we've got tuning, we've got fine tuning, we've got random. So that means it's going to select a pitch at random. But then of course we can change the envelope amount of the actual pitch just on one particular pad. So as we move this up and now play the patch, you can see we can start to get some pretty unique sounds, even if we actually drop this the other way. So it's going in the reverse. Okay, so
we can control as much, I guess, in terms of the pitch as we want. Now as we move through, we can actually also start playing with filters, and here's where it gets really cool, because you can see we've got classic, tube drive, hard clip, bit red, and red in terms of filters. So if I turn this on, it's only going to affect that one snare sound. So let's start playing around with this. If I move the resonance up, and distortion, you can see we can start to get a different sound. We've also got all of these different filter shapes that we can use. If we want to, I guess, get more distortion, let's drop that guy down. So you can see instantly I'm starting to create some different sounds just by moving parameters around. Let's go back and reset that. Actually, one other thing I'll show you is the amp. So we can control the volume of each individual sound, but not only the volume, we've got 4 auxiliary sends now. So if I want on this snare, well, let's use this clap. Let's turn the auxiliary up, and now let's go to our mixer and go to the auxiliary in our mixer, and now let's add a reverb. And you can see I've got 4 effects slots on each auxiliary. I've also got 4 effects slots over my kit and 4 over my master. So if you want to actually affect the tone of the overall kit, you can do that as well. In addition to that, if we go back to our instrument slots here, you can see that I can come up to my drum chart here, drum track, sorry, and activate different outputs. That now means I can come to my individual pads. So let's say this snare drum, and let's go back to edit and then to amp. Back to our main window there, and now I can select individual outputs. And of course, these individual outputs are now going to show up on the mixer. So I can now start to add effects over the top of it. There you can see my drum outputs right there. So if I now go in and add inserts, let's say an insert over the top of that, then I can now save that track preset, and these inserts will be remembered every time I load up that track preset. So you can set up a drum kit within Groove Agent SE exactly as you want it and recall it within seconds. That's not the only cool thing though. That will show us how we can work, I guess, in terms of manipulating sounds by using filters, effects, and okay, I guess editing the pitch. But what about if we want to actually play around with patterns? So let's reset this kit back to how it was. Actually, I'll move it back to drums and bass. Okay, so I've got my kit back without any of the changes. Now, how do we create patterns now that we've got the kit there? So there's this handy new feature inside of Groove Agent SE4 called the pattern bank. So check this out. If I play notes on the keyboard, I can switch in between different patterns. So live, I can have this MIDI'd up to any sort of, I guess, keyboard, any kind of pad bank. So I can be triggering pads as I go, or if I want, I can now just drag and drop grooves straight over into my main track. So check that out. So if I want, we can copy that. And now find another one, drag it straight over, drag it straight over. Not while it's playing. There we go. The other thing I can now do, once I've got those over into my main window, is open up my drum mat, which is now linked to Groove Agent SE. So I can go through and I can actually start editing my instruments there. Or if I want, I can go into MIDI inserts, into Beat Designer. I can turn this on. I can create some beats inside of Beat Designer. Let me just minimize that so it looks a little bit better. There you go. So I can put some hi-hats in. Now I can drag that straight across over into here. Or more importantly, if it's a beat that I really like, I can now bring my window over and I can pick up on this and load this straight over into the pattern bank. Or if I want, I can drag it straight over into this bank and immediately it's loaded straight into Groove Agent. So you can see we're not limited by patterns. We can use the MIDI controller to control patterns inside of Groove Agent SE. The other cool thing is we can create our own. We can save them inside the pattern library, or we can go through, I guess, the vast library of patches and MIDI files that are actually already inside of Groove Agent and through Beat Agent, and we can actually create our patterns and drag and drop them. So loads of different
potential for creating your own drum kits, manipulating the sound in your own drum kits, creating your own patterns, editing them, and also being able to use these patterns and play live. So we've talked about new instruments inside of Cubase. It's got over 2,800 new sounds. So if you need, I guess, the tools in terms of shaping the production sound that you're after with drums, synth sounds, sound design, then there's a lot to work with. But what about built-in effects? So everyone will know, I guess, the power of the convolution reverb, like Reverence, and the new channel strips that were included in Cubase 7. But in Cubase 7.5, they go a fair bit extra with 3 new built-in effects. Let's have a look at them. So the first one, and probably one of the most important new effects, is the new algorithmic reverb called Revelation. I've got this drum section that we were working with earlier. So I've just sent a send, I guess, through to the main effects track here. So you can see I've got a grouped track. If I go to my my mix window and we come along here, you can see the Reverence effect channel right here. So let's open this up. Hit play. Wow, wrong one. Here we go. Okay, so this is the user interface. So if you have a look, there's loads of presets that you can work with, but it's really easy to find your way around the actual interface yourself. So you can see here we've got early reflections, so we can change the size to give us a more realistic room shape. We can put a low cut on it and a high cut, so that's fairly standard. As we move across into the actual the tail, which is quite an important, I guess, component of any reverb sound. So we can change the delay, the room size, the actual time of the reverb itself, and then things like shape, density, high cut, of course, is really important. And then over the top, we've got things like modulation, control. But more importantly, we can go through and change the early reflections that we've got. So if we want a larger environment, we've got a hall, and then chamber, and then a smaller studio. So it's algorithmic, it loads really quickly, and it's a fantastic reverb unit. So that's Revelation. Let's take all our solos off. So this is a track that we've been working with over the course of the videos that we've been filming here at Gear for Music. So I'm just going to take the solo button off. So you can see it's a combination of live drums, quite a few effects thrown in there, and then loads of different synths that we were working on earlier with the quick controls. So it's not really that much of a, I guess, professional mix. It's just everything that we've thrown together over the last couple of hours. But I want to show you one of the most, I guess, groundbreaking new effects for Cubase. A lot of people will have worked with loop mash, and one of the biggest feature requests from people on our forums was to have the loop mash effects built into Cubase. So I've just gone to my main channel here, and you can see that now I've got this loop mash effect called up. So these are all the effects that you would actually find in the built-in effects section of loop mash. You can see we can change in between timing, so we've got semi-quavers, quavers, crotchets or minims, and then a number of these different effects. But one of the cool things about the way we can set this up is we can actually come down here and we can create a MIDI track. So let's say add MIDI track, and now let's call this loop mash effects. Okay, now let's go up to the routing, and that's the input. What we want to do is route this through to loop mash effects. And now if we go to the keyboard, you can see we can actually start controlling these effects very easily by playing on a MIDI keyboard or through, I guess, a set of MIDI pads or any MIDI controller. So if we hit play again. You won't believe it's gone, it's gone, it's gone, it's gone, it's gone. You've been waiting for so long. And you went and left here. So just to run through a few of them so you get the idea. So a staccato effect. So you get the idea. It's there to play around with. So it's not just the fact that it's built in and you can automate it as you can with anything in Cubase. The other side of that is we can actually record it or use it live in a live performance. And finally, in terms of effects, we've got an old favorite that's been reincarnated. If we come over to our main track again, you can see we have Magneto. So this is basically a tape-based simulator. So if we hit play, we can have a fiddle around with this. So let's take the solo off. So in terms of effects, we've got three great new effects. We've got Revelation, the loop mash based effects, which are out of the loop mash plugin, and then we've got Magneto. So that's the new effects built into Cubase 7.5. Three good reasons to upgrade from Cubase 7. So there's a lot to cover. We've been through, I guess, sounds, we've been through track versions, the new effects. Just quickly, I want to run you through some new workflow additions. In Cubase 7, there was a new mix console. There's been a lot of great feedback. I mean, that was a big request to, I guess, to completely redesign the old mix console, or the old mixer, and replace it with something new. So it was quite a daring move, but we're constantly adding to that and constantly trying to, I guess, configure the project window. So the project window and the mix window are quite uniformed. So just quickly, if we come up here and have a look at our mixer, you'll notice that up here we have these different configurations. So before this just said configuration 1, 2, 3, 4. But on the left-hand side here, we've got visibility. So let's say we've been working with live drums. We don't want to see the drums because we're going to work on, say, an instrument mix. So we only want to see the instruments. So now I can say, create configuration, and let's call this instruments. I hit OK, and now that's saved. So now I want to go back to maybe just working with my drums. So now I can get rid of these guys, or even here, I can click on, racks, and I can say, I don't want to see routing, I don't want to see any of this kind of stuff. Let's get rid of all of this. I just want to see my faders. And then over here, oops, sorry. There we go. Okay, so now I'm going to save this configuration as number 2. Well, let's just call it fader view. Okay, so now that I've got that, I can now come through and switch in between my different views. So the whole entire mixer is configurable. It's not just about which tracks you have a look at on the left-hand side or any zones that you have visible the whole way through your track. It comes down to how we actually have the mixer set up. So if you want a smaller fader section, you can do that as well, and then come up here and save that as, let's say that is my routing view and inserts. Okay, so it's not just on the mix window we can now do that. By the way, you've still got your track search that you had there and even things like your effects search. But if we come over here to our main track, you can see now we've got visibility. So the project window could be quite clunky if you're working with, I guess, multiple tracks. When I say multiple tracks, you know, we're talking hundreds of tracks for some people. So let's say we don't want to work with particular tracks. In much the same way as we could do with the mixer, we could actually come through and select what we were working on. So maybe this is vocals. So we can come through here now and say create configuration, vocals. Now let's turn everything back on. This might be a mix configuration. So it's going to be, well, I guess it's going to be a much more fuller view. So if we click on this, now this might be our mix. The other thing we can do when we're on visibility is turn off different types of tracks. So that's exactly the same as a mixer, but you couldn't do that before. The other thing we've got when it comes to visibility is this. So we can actually sync the project and the mix console. So we don't need to, I guess, remember any of the stuff we just did. It's just whatever we see on the mix console is going to be exactly the same as we see over on our project window. So whatever differences we make here will also affect the project window. So they're completely synchronized. The other cool thing we have, I guess, in terms of, where is it, racks? Here, is show all channels. So we can actually see which channels we want to see. We can control which channels we want to see on the mixer at any point in time. So we can say show tracks for data at the cursor position. So this is only going to show us the tracks that are actually active out on our project window at the cursor. Okay, so there's lots of different configurations in terms of workflow within the actual mix window itself. Even down to things like if we go into the drum track here. So let's go back to our inspector and open it up. Now let's go to the instrument itself. So if we're editing a kick drum, let's say we want to come through to the filter and we want to put, well, even pitch. We want to change the pitch. Or maybe we want to actually have the pitch move a little bit. So now we're really starting to mess with the sound. So we could come through and automate it this way. Or now we can actually right mouse click and say assign to new automation. Or we can say add to a particular automation. And now if we come out on our drum channel here, we say show all automation. Now we're going to actually have an automation for that, that function. So let's say show automation track, and you can see as I start to move through different parameters here. So let's put filter. Now you can start to see show kick, and you can see the automation tracks behind starting to build under Groove Agent. So these are new workflow additions that are, I guess, included in Cubase 7.5, but they're building on the good work that we started in Cubase 7, and these features are designed to save you mouse clicks and basically, yeah, save you money when you're working in a professional environment with Cubase 7.5.